Reddit. What one mistake ended your career? Working at a builder's merchant's. Customer calls to place order over the phone, not unusual, and wants to give me the card details there and then, red flag. I initially refused, but another member of staff vouched for them as they were regulars. Put the order through, knowing that whoever came to collect would need to come into the office for their paperwork before loading, so we would have them on CCTV if it did turn out to be suspect. Only the yard crew didn't follow process. When a van turned up for the goods, they loaded it all up and sent them away without asking for any kind of ID or manifest. The payment card was later reported as stolen, and the staff member who vouched for the customer denied even being in that day, which was a fucking lie as she never took time off. I got fired and everyone else got to keep their jobs. Worked retail pharmacy for 10 years. One day in the drive-thru we had a belligerent patient. Guy's doc sent his script to our other chain about 1.5 miles down the road. We were on the same street, addresses get mixed up all the time. No biggie, give me 10 minutes and I'll have it ready. Dude just starts laying into me for no reason. Calls me an idiot. Calls me incompetent. Says he knows where his doctor sent it and I'm a lazy, lying piece of shit, etc. After a few minutes going back and forth, with this guy yelling loud enough in my drive-thru that other staff inside the store can hear him, I tell him he needs to leave and find a new pharmacy. Guy lays into me again. Refuses to leave. I tell him fuck off or I'm calling the police. Apparently that was over the line for my company. No interview with HR, no discipline, no suspension, just straight up fired my ass about 3 weeks later after internal investigation. Led and recruited a sales team. One of the female sellers admitted that our CEO was sexually harassing her. Got her to confess to our sales manager. Found out that more of our female staff had similar experiences, so I rallied them as I needed evidence before proceeding. CEO got an earful from HR, proceeds to pressure all his female victims until one of them drops my name. I get fired. Built a castle out of Christmas chocolate biscuit boxes in the warehouse of a major retailer on a night shift and proceeded to fall asleep in it for a few hours. I was the assistant director at a summer camp. One of the very last nights was a sleepover night where all of the campers were there, but not all of the regular day staff. 2 of the counselors were caught drinking beer, and in an attempt to weasel his way out, one of them told the head of the camp that I gave him permission to do so. I most definitely had not. While I didn't get fired on the spot or have my year-end bonus withheld like the other 2, I was told I wouldn't be asked back again for next year, where there had already been talks of me being a full director in the future. Talked about comp to another employee. They told the manager about it. Got fired. The good part is it's illegal and the idiot created a paper trail around it. They settled out of court for way more than they would have saved by people not talking about comp. Not exactly a career, but I worked in a fast food spot that didn't have any air conditioning, and there's a workers' law where I live that states once it gets to a certain temp in the building they legally can't stay open. I brought a thermometer to work. I sent a scathing email about my boss directly to my boss. It wasn't meant for him. To this day I still have no idea what possessed me to put his name in the address bar. I noticed his name the exact moment I hit send. You have never felt that much panic. I was a part-time intern making $9 an hour, and my boss asked if I had any plans for the weekend. I had said I was going to buy a new car, very much old and used as that's what I could afford, and he asked if I was buying a brand new car. My response was that my budget isn't big enough for a new car, and a couple weeks later during my one-year review my manager said they didn't have the work for me and that I was disrespectful for telling the boss I didn't make enough money. At the time I was living comfortably as a college student, just needed different transportation. I tried not to be disrespectful, but apparently I was. Derailed it a bit, took some years to recover. Got security responsibilities added to my duties as sysadmin at a small university. Was asked by my boss, the IT director, to do a security audit. He asked me to report on the audit at a department meeting. I asked if I could present my results to him privately instead and have him present to the meeting, but he insisted I could take care of it. My report showed major security holes, demonstrations of tests of said holes, and recommendations for patching said holes. Many of the patches were at the level of change the administrator password from password to something less obvious. As my political acumen was near zero at the time, I didn't realize how the report on major security problems made the IT director look completely incompetent in front of the entire department. He had built and configured the campus computer system pretty much on his own, at least in his mind, and was quite proud of his accomplishment. He suspended me on the spot, demoted me, and tried to convince the university to fire me and try to bring me up on criminal charges for hacking into the university's computer systems. I was opening my packages in the mailroom, using a pocket knife to slice open the package tape. Secretary came in and chatted. We're both Italian, so we gesture a lot while talking. Sometime after the conversation, the ops manager came down from his office and escorted me out of the building. Had forgotten the knife in my hand while talking with the secretary, and she made an accusation that I had threatened her with it during our conversation. Was fired 3 days later. I had worked with this woman for almost a decade. Helped her children with their homework, etc. Years later, I learned corporate wanted to take down my boss, and started the process by going after his biggest supporters. I was the third domino to fall. After I was railroaded, almost 40% of the branch's staff left the company. I guess the secretary was in on it, and left at any excuse to take me out. Shame. Really loved that job. And got fired when my first child was due in only 4 weeks. Was very demoralizing for quite a while. Didn't happen to me. But I remember a coworker of mine getting fired because he put laxatives in his own lunch bag. Some dickhead kept stealing parts of our lunches. Turned out, it was our supervisor. Went on a first date with a girl who turned out to be a horrible person. 20 minutes in, I did what I could to get out of it because she was telling stories about crazy things she'd done and was proud of. I didn't pull anything to get out of it, just dodged landmines and asked a ton of questions about her so I could get out of it sooner. Then said I wasn't feeling the connection and I wanted to be honest so we didn't waste each other's time. Found out a week later that she contacted my previous employers because she found my LinkedIn, told them all stories about how I talked a ton of shit about them all. And now I can't get a reference from my previous 3 jobs, and people I was on good terms with. All because I went on a date with a psychopath. Not me, but my best friend. He found a stash of porn on a network computer that belonged to the boss, then showed it to everyone. Ended up working in a supermarket after that, and said half the people there had criminal records. Getting promoted to supervisor started the dominoes falling. I worked at a prison. I had been there for about 7 years and I knew I was most qualified, so I applied for the open sergeant's position. I got it, which is where this story starts. As a sergeant, it was my job to do investigations and document the findings whenever an inmate alleged his life was in danger. I would do the investigation and do a report on my findings, and it would get sent to the warden for them to interpret the evidence and make a final decision. So, one day, an inmate gets beat up on a building I was in charge of. This inmate had never spoken to me, and had never told anyone he was having friction with his cellmate. Well, when questioned about it, the inmate said he had told me he needed to be moved and I told him I would. Initially, my supervisors believed him, but after I pulled up the surveillance camera that showed I had never even gotten down to that area that night due to being on a mission from another one of my supervisors all night, they admitted I hadn't talked to him. However, the higher-ups needed someone to blame, and because it was my area, I got the blame and got fired. As a side note, I was salty about getting fired because I cared about my job, but I wouldn't go back if they begged me. I have a much better job now, and the prison is so short-staffed because of how they treat their people. The officers are stuck doing 16-hour days, 6 days a week. No thank you. A guy I knew got fired for sleeping with the boss's daughter. Nothing dodgy, entirely above board. He didn't even know they were related and had never met her before. They met on a night out, he went back to her parents' place and they had sex, no problems, no drama, etc. The next morning they got dressed and she was showing him to the door when her dad, his boss, walked out of the kitchen. In my opinion, that's pretty fucked up. They were consenting adults, he had no idea it was his boss's daughter. No significant age difference, she wasn't wasted or anything, she'd never worked at the company when my friend was there or even met him. This reminds me of the story of a friend of mine. She got her PhD in chemistry and then applied to a company specializing in a process she was really interested in. However, they did not have any research positions open, so she just applied for a job as a technician where they normally hire people with much lower qualifications. She explicitly told them that she does not mind the position and that money is not that important to her. In the end, she was not hired on the grounds of being overqualified. Fast forward 6 years, she is now leading a research team of their biggest competitor developing a product similar to theirs. The HR person who did not hire her for being overqualified in the past contacts her on LinkedIn in a desperate attempt to headhunt her. What they don't know is that she is already set on becoming head of her R&D division because of the results she delivered. The HR person even went as far as to offer her a pretty hefty salary, but my friend just responded, as I told you in the past, money is not that much of a motivator for me. And that's been it for today. If you have any intriguing stories or opinions regarding the shared stories, please feel free to share them in the comments section below. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.